14. The hatred of time. Whether we examine Kant, Kierkegaard, the Romantic poets, contemporary writers, artists, and existentialists, we find that, in terms of their faith, man everywhere has a common problem. His problem is finitude and the temporal limitation, that is, space and time, combined with a nature or essence which defines man as unlimited or potentially eternal. This is the, quote, tragedy, end quote, of man as modern man sees it. Sartre has denied that man has an essence. Man has being, existence, but no given nature. However, Sartre then proceeds in Being and Nothingness to define man's essence as that of a potential God. The true and given nature of man, thus, is this, quote, futile passion, end quote, to be God, and the combination of this existential essence with the limitations of space and time is man's tragedy. It is also called man's, quote, anguish, end quote. Thus, modern man sees his problem with space and time as a metaphysical problem rather than a moral one. By this transformation, his, quote, anguish, end quote, over space and time becomes a problem of metaphysics rather than an aspect of his original sin, his moral problem. Man, by this means, seeks to dignify his sin into metaphysics, but instead only compounds it. The ostensibly Christian thinker who falls into the trap of treating the problem on the sinner's terms has compounded the evil. Where such mental and moral juggling takes place in any man, we should not be surprised at the consequences. The insanities of such men from Kierkegaard and Nietzsche to the present begin and end in a moral crisis. The literature of such a philosophy is the literature of, quote, the romantic agony, end quote, of masochism, sadism, and suicide. These practices enter into both philosophy and life. Thus, the poems of Sylvia Plath, 1932 to 1962, such as Lesbos, Edge, Daddy, and Last Words, scream with murderous self-hate and hatred of others, and are rife with masochism, sadism, murder and suicide, but, above all, with the typical existentialist self-centeredness and self-righteousness. Her suicide was a logical outcome of her faith. When the existentialists write about life, they are really talking about death. When they write about art or poetics, they are again talking about death. Thus, poetess Lynn Sukanik, who teaches writing and literature at a large university, says of poetics, I want to bring to the law and order of existence the chaos of poetry. Poetry once saw the order in the chaos of man's history. Now it is insistent on seeing chaos, and more than chaos, death. The roots of this suicidal view of life, time and history are in Hegel's philosophy. Hegel saw the meaning of time and history as an impulse of perfectibility and the capacity for change. This sounds very good until we realize that Hegel has no test for perfection, no goal, no standard, nothing but the blind faith that the world spirit is striving to realize itself, whatever that may be. The principle of perfectibility, indeed, is almost as indefinite a term as mutability in general. It is without scope or goal, and has no standard by which to estimate the changes in question, the improved, more perfect state of things toward which it professedly tends is altogether undetermined. In other words, it is all meaningless, and to be perfect is to abandon all meaning for blind and senseless change. Is this too harsh an assessment? The words of Hegel just cited give us this conclusion. More than that, Hegel tells us that it is precisely when a suicidal and schizophrenic inner conflict exists that perfection and freedom also exist. The realization of its idea is mediated by consciousness and will. These very faculties are, in the first instance, sunk in their primary, merely natural life. The first object and goal of their striving is the realization of their merely natural destiny, but which, since it is a spirit that animates it, is possessed of vast attractions and displays great power and moral richness. Thus, spirit is at war with itself. It has to overcome itself as its most formidable obstacle. That development which, in the sphere of nature, is a peaceful growth, is, in that of spirit, a severe, a mighty conflict with itself. What spirit really strives for is the realization of its ideal being. But, in doing so, it hides that goal from its own vision, and is proud and well satisfied in this alienation from it. Its expansion, therefore, does not present the harmless tranquility of mere growth, as does that of organic life, but a stern, reluctant working against itself. It exhibits, moreover, not the mere formal conception of development, but the attainment of a definite result. The goal of attainment we determine at the outset. It is the spirit in its completeness, in its essential nature, that is, freedom. Note how Hegel despises mere growth and the mere formal conception of development. Perfectibility, for him, is the radical freedom of autonomous man, freedom from God, freedom to oppose, and endlessly to oppose. Hegel is, or should be, the patron saint of psychoanalysts and psychiatrists. He has created the world of their patients. Hegel is also the father of revolutionists and artists. Walt Whitman caught Hegel's spirit very early. War against everything. Convert sex into perversion and outrage. Play the role of the perpetual outsider, no matter how banal and trite your message. And, above all, despise life and time, as Hegel did. They are limitations on autonomous man, who should be not only beyond good and evil, but beyond this life and time. Hegel, in commenting on the God of Scripture, in commenting on Judaism, said, "The jealous God is known as the negation of the individual." Precisely. Because Hegel's individual is a being whose goal it is to be God, the God of Scripture is his negation. Hence, Hegel's individual must negate time, life, and God. He must say nay to all things, because all things reveal their Maker. And he must strive to remake the world after his own image of autonomy. The world, therefore, becomes a void, like himself, and time a burden. Having rejected God, like Dostoevsky's Ivan Karamazov in The Brothers Karamazov, Hegelian man, modern man, must reject God's creation also. This means rejecting time. Hazel Barrington Selby's poem speaks of vengeful time. Putnam, as a good atheist, wrote that our lives are detective stories of which we are the authors, and hence, we know the cause and the results. Knowing the answers, Putnam concluded his poem, "Why do we wait?" Having written the story ourselves, having affirmed our autonomy, we should have our two hands severed from our wrists. Does this mean Putnam renounced his atheistic faith? On the contrary, the more frustrating a faith, the more commendable it is to modern man. And Putnam wrote proudly and self-righteously, "I am an atheist." In his Hymn to Chance, Putnam held that a man finds freedom when he finds chance. He saw himself as a new Adam in the new world of anarchy and chance, totally existential in all his views. Thus, we should not be surprised that he was, in varying degrees, an invalid all his life. Health and life were not to his taste. In his morning song, Putnam found it weird that the sun has a faithful cycle of setting and rising again. Putnam's hope, which enables him to, quote, scorn, end quote, the blue skies of day, is that soon enough I shall not have to rise. Modern man hates time and is in love with death, not life. The moral problem for him is therefore to be ready and willing to abide by the results of suicide. The hatred of time is the hatred of life.